Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and today we're going to continue to dive into one of our favorite topics around blockchain, but more specifically, we're going to go into the area of tokenization, looking at tokenization of assets and how all of this future around tokenization may be disrupting the overall financial industries of everything we do, from the enterprise to the consumer to our daily lives and even the technology that we look at. We just talked a few minutes ago on Blockchain and Crypto Today, earlier this morning, around Jack Dorsey's NFT tweets, something that was once a tweet or a post that then was tokenized in some way through a non-fungible token, NFT, and then sold for almost $3 million. Now, that's just one simple use case of many others. We've seen the idea of tokenization coming into the world around supply chain logistics. We talked about this around mobility and Fiat and Volkswagen, what they're doing to reward sustainable drivers or good drivers around the idea of tokens as well. But there's many other use cases and much more to talk about. We also are looking at the world of decentralized finance today. DeFi, according to DeFiPulse.com, is resting just over $41 billion in total value locked, or TVL, just shy of that near all-time high over $45 billion. But we've brought some investor friends from around the world, a part of the VCTV family, to break all of this down and what they're seeing along with their on-the-ground perspective of this industry. So let's go ahead and introduce them. But before we do, a big thank you to each of you for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or just want to say hello, the comment boxes are open across all platforms. We'd love to hear from you. We'll do our best to ask your questions in real time. If not, we're all available 24/7, 365 afterwards as well. And if you'd like to be on a show like today, either as an investor or entrepreneur, do reach out to the team and or myself. We'll find that right spot for you. A big thank you to the Low Token team and to Maria for making today's episode of VCTV possible. With that, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Let's go ahead and introduce today's guests as well. Alicia, welcome to the show. First time, a little introduction, a little background on yourself, please. Alicia, we had you on mute there. Apologies. Why don't you go ahead and unmute and try one more time?
Hi. I'm sitting in Hong Kong. I guess my journey sort of started getting me here. Many years ago, I decided to be a doctor, scrap that idea in order to pursue a career at Goldman Sachs, where I worked in what was a long time ago called debt capital markets. I remember the first time they had this conference to tell everyone about this really strange new thing called derivatives. So I'm basically that old. Moved from there to work in the commodities markets for about a decade in London, New York, and in Asia, and ended up in the macro space in Hong Kong, doing interest rates and foreign exchange. My evolution into what you could call this new paradigm is basically my desire for social good, trying to find a way to find a bridge between value and being valuable in society. So that's pretty much why I'm here. And now I'm at a great startup in Hong Kong by the name of Carbon Base, in which we're trying to leverage emerging technologies to reduce emissions and for enterprises and individuals. So.
Love it. Welcome, welcome. And we'll continue the Hong Kong trend as we have another friend here from Hong Kong as well. So Alicia, welcome to the show first time. And Max Song, welcome as well. A little intro, a little background for you as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kyle. It's wonderful to be back. I've really enjoyed being on the show numerous times last year. So it's really incredible to see the show continue to evolve and, wonderful people come and share their knowledge and insights. Myself, I formerly was a data scientist in California, helped a lot of large financial institutions go through pretty arduous data calculation exercises for reporting and also prediction. Came to Asia in 2017 2016 after finishing a master's degree at a sort of a geopolitical and international relations master's in Beijing, and joined and worked for 2 different Hong Kong family office groups for the last now close to 3 years. Had a chance to help invest in the blockchain sector for a while and saw a lot of trends. And then very excited to be working with Alicia on Carbon-Base today. And I really see 2 simultaneous convergences I'm happy to sort of spend more time sharing. One of them is the digital asset space, especially from institutional investors. And the other is the focus on sustainability and green investments, also from the sovereigns and also the large asset managers. So seeing how these 2 trends intersect with each other and create sort of ripples or interesting intersections is something I'm paying a lot of attention to right now. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Max. Welcome. Noble, welcome back, my friend. Someone who loves tokenization and NFTs. A little introduction, a little background for everybody.
Yeah, good to see you again, Kyle, and everybody on the panel. My name is Noble Drakoin. I'm the principal manager of Drakoin Capital Partners. We're based in Los Angeles. We focus on helping various seed-level companies as well as mature companies find and raise capital. I'm also a 28-year veteran in the commodities futures market, having written 7 books on trading and investing. Last one's being Winning the Trading Game and Trade Like a Pro with Wiley Sons. And in my transition, and what brought me into the space was I kind of semi-retired and started a gaming company called Where Play Games, in which we were integrating augmented reality and merchandise and physical items, now NFTs, to improve and increase the landscape. And so now, we're doing nothing but tokenization and using NFTs in all of our gaming. And I do believe the next big gig economy is gaming, and tokenization is what's going to help.
Absolutely. A lot more to talk about on that as well. Adrian, welcome back to the show. A little intro, a little background for everybody, please.
Thank you, Kyle, for having me here again. Hello, everybody. I'm Adrian Niculescu, serial entrepreneur and investor. My genius zones are marketing, sales, and business development, and I love keeping my hands dirty in these areas. Besides my advisory roles and slots in boards of companies, I'm actively involved with Cloudcoin Consortium. Cloudcoin is a post-blockchain digital currency. Faster Capital, a Dubai-based accelerator and incubator for startups. Sara Global Ventures, which is a London-based venture capital firm. And also I'm a mentor in Richard Branson's Virgin Startups program in UK. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Adrian. Last but not least, Fabio, welcome back to the show. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm an economist by training. I have a PhD from the University of Chicago in economics, and I've been working in various international institutions, for example, in the International Monetary Fund. Then I moved to the European Central Bank. Then I moved to the private sector to work for Goldman Sachs in London. And I moved to the Arabian Peninsula to work for sovereign institution, in particular sovereign wealth funds. And I've been for 8 years the Chief Strategy Officer of the Oman Investment Fund. Now, in my latest reincarnation, I am assisting as a partner of an investment bank based in New York. I'm assisting innovative companies to raise funds primarily on the over-the-counter market in New York.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. Excited to dive into today's topic. Again, it's a top of mind, it seems, every day more and more on a global scale, whether that's the tokenization of things like art or social media posts, as we talked about earlier, to gaming, moving into the enterprise and even financial markets as well. So the tokenization of companies from around their own securities or other securities as well. And I'm referring to equity holdings within those companies. So would love to get kind of a view from each of you as to what you see happening around tokenization. Where is this industry today and where is it going? Noble, let's start it off with you. I mean, you live and breathe and eat this industry. We talk about it a lot here on VCTV. Why don't we kick it off with you as to what your view is, and then I'll come around to everyone else for theirs as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the idea with tokenization is, particularly in the non-fungible space, has kind of taken too long. You know, the idea that we started going to currency first and not really focusing on assets was a missed opportunity that we're all making up for. You know, the reality is, you know, not everything is equal. And because it's not equal, the non-fungible or the NFT space is exploding and it's not going to be fractalized. And everyone's coming up with their own version of it. You know, you have ERC 1155, you got Binance coming up with their own version. Tron just announced they're going to come up with their own version. And this is going to be a significant play in a lot of ways, because now not only are you able to statically show that this item exists and it's available, but you're also going to be able to, and what I've always talked about is, you know, you have this whole generation that's grown up renting things their whole life. So streaming music, you know, I grew up owning CDs. Most people, my older sons, have only ever streamed. And so now they're going to actually have assets, and those assets are going to be these NFTs that they can now borrow, lend. And this really lays the full foundation for a true decentralized finance opportunity, that you can take these assets, you know who owns them, you can see who owns them, and you can measure the value of them and then borrow again. So this space it's really the vision of Ready Player One come to life. Now all the assets you have can be seen digitally, you own them and you control them, but that comes with a lot of responsibility.
Yes, it does. And Ready Player One, we welcome, but nonetheless, the responsibility is a good question. We've also started to see, because of that, and specific around NFTs, the need for custody solutions. And I believe it is in Hong Kong, one of the first NFT custody companies has launched. HEX, I believe it's Hex Trust, has launched based out of Hong Kong to provide these custody solutions, because as you hold these assets, to your Noble's point, where do you put them? And what happens to them? How do you manage to keep them safe? And this is going to be a question that's going to continue to rise. Max, switching over to you, your same question, your view, where are we at now and where are we going around this world of tokenization?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. And just to continue on Noble's excellent remarks, I think that, you know, the millennial generation really is not as keen to spend their whole lives slaving away for, you know, a very expensive physical asset these days. And in fact, there's a common sentiment that the digital asset space is going to appreciate a lot more in their lifetime than actually the traditional sources of wealth and storages of wealth that we've looked to previously. I think the other part of it, and it's kind of fascinating how crypto really has opened people's eyes to, you know, having a consideration of macroeconomics. I think one of our other speakers here, you know, was formerly also a macroeconomist as well, about how money works. You know, who gets to decide how much money to print, you know, when to print it, you know, who gets the money after it's been created, where does it go, like what does it do, like how does it affect our ability to buy things. And I think this crypto evolution has really opened our eyes to the matrix that is the global monetary supply. And increasingly, you know, I follow a lot of Ray Dalio. I think he has a wonderful perspective on the long-term and short-term debt cycle, and he's been sounding the alarm that the 70-year debt cycle is kind of reaching a terminal process here. And what that means is that all of the capital creation and monetary supply expansion since, I think, 2008 to today, last 12, 13 years, is going to start having, we start having the hangover for it. And I think there's going to be a significant amount of capital moving into Bitcoin as a way to hedge against the coming inflation. And that makes a whole different sector of society, you know, increasingly more wealthy. And this sector of society is not the people who've traditionally been in finance. It's been people who've been alienated or, you know, at the fringe of society, and now who are getting a lot more airtime and their consumption desires, their perks and their quirks are going to show up in the things that get funded. So if you look at the NFT art, it doesn't look anything like the art that hangs on the MoMA. It's actually edgier. There's a lot more of a digital content perspective, and also an appreciation to design experiences that can be transferable over to the metaverse. And I think these are innovations that we're only starting to realize. And with Roblox going public recently, I think that there's going to be a few pretty significant companies that are going to capture all of this desire to own and use digital assets in the future.
I think you're right. I see Noble shaking his head, a few others as well. This is just the beginning of something very unique. Alicia, I want to come to you next. Anything to add on to Noble and Max, but also your view of tokenization and where you see this industry going? And just so you know, you're on mute.
Well, I guess when to give a little bit more background, my first entry into the space was about, I would say about 8 to 10 weeks ago. So I'm able to sort of walk into this this channel and give you the perspective of someone who had their doubts about sort of the viability of the system and sort of what is in terms of like NFTs and tokenization, and being able to look at it with my background I had. Basically, the way in which I viewed it is that there's definitely a paradigm shift which has occurred in the financial industry, and they're talking about disruption to the financial industry as the topic, and that digital transformation has allowed through the process of tokenization, from a pure old school financial sense, access to liquidity for assets that typically do not have, assets like music and art, which were typically not very liquid. It gave you a broader marketplace to access, for more people to access the market and to participate. A greater transparency through the blockchain system, and definitely less costly and less timely transactions, which all of that together has, in a pure financial sense, makes it a very, potentially great and robust market. I think there's been a lot of noise about the way I look at tokenization, just like old school securitization. It's just like you're taking an asset, you're placing a value on that asset. I think the topics around tokenization that sort of been most in dialogue of is what is actually being tokenized, like what is the actual underlying asset. I think that whether or not you're looking at whether or not a piece of art can actually be fractionized, and what is the value of something that is fractioned, or whether or not the object itself has any value at all, which is sort of a way in which we are now looking at what has value, basically. And when I look at it in that sense, I think I appreciate that dialogue, and I think it's very interesting. And it's sort of like the dialogue I hear mostly when I'm listening to conversations about tokenization and NFTs, whether or not it's people not seeing a viability in the market. Maybe it's sort of like the Amsterdam tulips or something, or whether or not it's people who think it's the future. And I think we could be somewhere in between. And I think that the two are not necessarily independent. I don't think one market is going to wipe out the other. But what I do think is that instead of having a dialogue about the tangibility of the asset that's underlying what's being tokenized, is more so what can be done with the actual market itself. Like, what is the potential of that market? Whether or not it's being able to take this market, which is sort of democratized the way in which you can actually raise funds, and the way in which you can actually use funds, the way in which you can actually hold funds, and under what supervision you can do that, and do something that actually has a positive social impact with that system. And so I do love the discussions about whether or not someone's tweet is awesome. By the way, I think I've tweeted like 5 times in my life, so I could tweet now, but I don't think you guys would get more than $10 for it.
Actually,
but my daughter would probably have to help me do it.
I would say there's an argument that actually could be worth a lot. I mean, 5 tweets, the rarity of that.
There are tons of things I've never done. I've never sent a message on Signal. I've never sent a message on Telegram. I have all these things, never done it. I could go out, do a dance, make a song, all of these sorts of things. But and again, I think the great conversation that society is having, and that's probably from the backdrop. I mean, I think a lot of this, what we're talking about, wouldn't even be possible. I think it's happening, but the extent to which it's happening would not be possible without the events that have happened in like the past year and a half or year. For Hong Kong people, it's been like a traumatic, year and a half, almost 2 years now. But I think without the disruption to our daily life, being able to look at sort of how we see ourselves, having economies disrupted, all of these things have contributed to us looking at life in a different way. Whether or not you're looking at I mean, this has happened so many times before in history. I don't think the paradigm shift that's happening now has never happened to this degree, but I think that what we are weaponized with now is technology, which has never existed in this form and has never been distributed in this form. It's my daughter can literally tokenize something right now on her phone. She's 7. When I was 7 years old, I had to ask my mom if I could use the rotary phone. So, I mean, I think that the possibilities of the ideas of everyone who has that technology in hand, that has the ability to access the information and the things they could do with it, is what I am most excited about in the market.
I think that potential of what's to come is just so exciting, right? We started with real estate, I think was one of the first use cases where tokenization played a role. We got into equities around companies. Then we got into this whole boom around art and gaming, which I think, according to latest stats, this is just the NFT, non-fungible token market. Right now, as of where we are in 2021, we've seen almost $700 million in transactions in just these first, again, less than 3 months in the year. Last year, the entire market was 250 million. The year before that, 2019, it was 62 million. So there's something here, and it's not just a moment, it's actually a progression. Next, we're seeing these other opportunities start to arise, right? I talked about mobility, we've got retail, we've got many more areas that are starting to rise as well. And as the three of you have already painted, and Adrian, I want to come to you next around this. What's your view, and what are you seeing happening in the world of tokenization today?
Kyle, if you remember a few months ago, I mentioned more than once the fact that the music industry, the entertainment industry, how music is distributed and sold will shift in a different direction. And somehow, since that moment until now, the NFT world took the music industry by a storm, which is actually a good thing. I remain anyway faithful to the real estate tokenization, and I'm even with the team. We are building a product for about 1 year and something in this space, because tokenization as an industry, real estate as an industry, is tokenized just a little bit right now. So the wave here will be huge. And also, I'm looking at the stock market, and I like very much the idea of synthetic assets. There are platforms like Morpher. I don't know if you know this platform, where basically using a MetaMask wallet, you can buy positions in in every stock available in the market, in CFDs, in most of the usual cryptos, and it's a huge deal. I think what you can do, even when you are logged in with a crypto wallet, you don't need the usual username, password, or email. And these are the things I'm looking at very, very close. And I'm very happy that so many artists who really suffered from the lack of gigs in 2020 are able to monetize their creations on a free market, on a democratized free market, and they are able to fund their activities. This is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I mean, Noble has mentioned gaming as well. We've talked a lot about the gaming economy or the virtual economy that's rising right now as more people are being involved in that. We also have this new digital economy that's starting to come up with digital goods and digital collectibles as well, and a whole opportunity there. Fabio, I want to come to you next around your view of tokenization as well.
As usual, we use the same word, tokenization, to indicate different things. Now, if you think of tokenizing the first tweet, that's essentially a collector's item. So if you can reasonably assign a property title to that first tweet, as Dorsey has obviously done, then you will have a collector item that can be traded, bought and sold, and that's nothing particularly new, in the sense that it's just another item that somebody might like to collect. Likewise, digital art. If you create a piece of art which can be exclusively pinpointed and whose property rights can be unequivocally assigned to a particular individual or institution, there you have the same phenomenon that in the non-digital economy pertains to art collection, transferred into the digital economy. So the token by itself becomes akin to a property title, which you can then exchange for money. Likewise, you can tokenize, I don't know, the first execution of a very famous song, maybe by the Beatles, if you have a way for the holders of the copyright of that song, of that execution, to design a contract, property contract that then can be exchanged. So here we are in this kind of collector's items, just design digital world, which is very similar conceptually to the what we already have in the real world. The difference, there is a difference though with tokens that are issued against, say, real estate. Okay, there you can have a property, I don't know, a castle or a historical villa, and the owner wants to somehow monetize that asset. He can issue tokens against, which represent, I don't know, 1/1,000,000th of the property of that villa or castle. But in that case, there is an issue, as Alicia was saying, of fractional property. What does it mean that you own 1/1,000,000th of a piece of real estate? If you want then to exchange the token with that 1,000,000th of property, how do you do it? So it becomes just something whose value depends on a set of circumstances and whose value is not very well defined. It depends on demand and supply, but I wouldn't, for example, advise to buy something like that. There is another area, for example, I don't know, wine. You can tokenize the production of a certain vineyard for a certain year. and therefore each token represents a bottle. You have to make sure that the property rights on each of these bottles is linked in a coherent and verifiable way to a token. And then what you have is a sort of stable coin. In other words, you have a cryptocurrency backed by a real asset, which in this case is a bottle of wine produced by a certain vineyard in a certain year. So as you see, the under the same heading, we can have several situations which are conceptually very different, and for the financial world have different implications in terms of value and tradability.
I agree. I mean, and then, you know, being able to create those new marketplaces of tradability is definitely going to be something. But where are we missing? Where are the gaps? Where are those opportunities for those looking to get into this, to begin disrupting financial markets, or just in general? I mean, again, tokenization spans everything. The idea that we'll take the once physical and turn it digital, right? Also known as digital twins, for many out there who have been paying attention to this industry. The idea we're moving towards that world more aggressively than we once were opens up a world of possibilities, from, again, the enterprise to us as consumers, and even the infrastructure that it takes to build some of these. So, Noble, let's start with you. We're going to come around. This will be probably our big question of today. Noble, where are those opportunities? Where are those gaps in the market that people need to be focused on right now in helping this wave of tokenization, which, to be clear, is not a moment, and it's not something that will be here tomorrow or in a year from now. This is a decades-long movement. This is something that will be inherently, unless we're all wrong, this will all be a part of our lives in some way, shape, or form going forward. So, Noble, start that picture for us, and we'll come around everywhere. And hi, everybody, by the way. I see all the comments coming in. So, hi, everyone. We've got someone joining in from Nigeria, someone joining in from Hong Kong as well. So this is great. But Noble, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Kyle, I mean, it's so funny because when we started talking about NFTs, I've been talking about NFTs since the pandemic started, and nobody was really talking about the non-fungible token space, and they didn't really get it, and I got it the moment I saw it. And I knew that it was going to be the big tipping point for the adoption of Web 3.0 and really proving asset development. And so, for me, you know, I've been a big investor in music royalties since 1999, and it's always been, you know, I buy royalties, performance or publisher rights or whatever, and that system for the music industry has been broken for a long time. You know, if you write a song or you create a song and then you want to ASCAP or BMI, you almost have to wait 90 days to really figure out what is owed, and you may not even get a check for 6 months. And the music industry and a lot of royalty-based, you know, I've been approached with film rights. A lot of those royalty-based items are just so difficult for people to unlock their cash. And up until now, you've had nothing but a lot of predatory lending in that space because banks don't know how to measure it and like. And so even for us, we've started creating and focusing on opportunities to fast track the ability for people to tap into a lot of their royalties right now, or even to monetize the catalog we have. We even created an NFT around that you can either have the NFT value or you can have the actual income from the performance royalty by staking the NFT, right? So there's so many cool things happening right now in the creative space that's so awesome to allow people to tap into it. But there's also the danger side. I believe that there will be a lot of buyer's remorse over the next 2 years as well. And it's because everything can be tokenized, doesn't mean necessarily tokenized, right? It doesn't mean that it has, you know, the first, you know, 10 tweets or 20 tweets. You know, you fall into basic economic theory, right, of the greater fool. Who's going to now buy this 10 tweets if it doesn't have an additional person who's interested? And so there's really going to be a balance of how this stuff is an ecosystem and then who really believes in it to believe that it's going to move forward. And that's how all finance works. That's how all capital works. Basic belief, basic monetary thoughts. But the reality is, I think there's going to be the next phase of this movement that people are going to want to have some kind of hard asset or something that ties to the NFT to produce an additional value. And it doesn't mean all of them are going to be like that, but we just always have to be cautious that you have to hope that some of these things will have someone else who wants to buy them, whereas items that produce income or tapped into some kind of real world source are going to also be just as valuable as items that are created on in the ether space. So it's something that we have to pay attention to that we're looking at. So yeah, Fabio is correct. There's just so many different ways that we look at these NFTs.
I like how you called it the ether space. Unsure of which direction, just the ether space. I love it. Max, thank you, Noble. Max, I want to come to you. You're both, an entrepreneur in this space. You're supporting as an advisor to many companies, but also an investor in the space. What do you see as those opportunities or gaps around tokenization as we push forward?
I think that's the first, people who create NFTs, you have to know how to code, you have to audit your smart contracts. If you look at the website space, we have Wix and Strikingly and Squarespace who've really now become the de facto way you make websites. I think that the NFT marketplaces are trying to compete for becoming the de facto way that you create NFTs. And I think that there could be many, many vertical specific use cases, right? So today, the NFTs that's really taken off is the symbolic ones, meaning that there's artistic value or representational value that's being captured, and also reputational value. But I think that as someone who's done a lot more computer science and data, there's actually ways to make the NFTs even more interesting with functional value. One key example actually is the idea of insurance, right? So an insurance contract is essentially a multidimensional object that contains a bunch of metadata about the person that's bounded to, about the terms, about the way the interest is accruing. You can imagine actually creating individual NFTs for each person who has an insurance policy. The policy is the contract itself with a wallet address and the ability to invest and manage its own funds. And that is kept in a separate vehicle than other people's pools. Not at risk of having that disappear on you, or if the firm goes down. So those are sort of financial products level creation that and also fit into the framework of what an NFT represents, which is essentially a token with a bunch of unique identifying attributes. And the other thing I think I want to mention, and this is kind of in common to some of the former speakers here, is if we look at the evolution of the commodities market, commodities as a concept really emerged sometime in the late 60s, early 70s as a very essential part of daily life that was completely under-financialized in terms of risk and how people were able to purchase mitigation options on prices moving against them if they're a farm grain producer or other oil producer. And if we think about the value being created today, I think Mary Meeker at Kleiner does this big State of the Internet report. The essential part of the value today is no longer physical. It's actually digital. It's actually the data that we generate from all of the activities we do, all the content we make, from both YouTube to in the future, virtual reality type of content. And it seems natural that we should start be thinking about what is the derivatives market for the large part of the GDP, the contribution of the developed world, which is essentially, digital stuff, digital data. And to be completely honest, from 2005 to 2016, 11 years, there's been an absolute pillaging of the data by the Facebook, Google of companies, which essentially gave you a service in exchange for all your data. And I think we're just beginning to realize that actually, by the way, hold on, actually I'm the product here, or in some ways I'm the contributor of the largest $1 trillion companies in the world, but I'm actually not being paid anything for it. And I think where we're going in the future is actually one, data sovereignty. It seems very obvious and rapidly converging a social consensus, and two, the creation of derivatives for this new type of economy asset.
Thank you, Max. Alicia, you've been 8 to 10 weeks new into this industry, which is a fantastic view to have on it, because for some of us, as Noel mentioned, we've been in it for years. So maybe we don't see everything, or we feel there's certain opportunities where there shouldn't be. being new to this industry and looking at it from this fresh perspective, what do you see as some of those areas of gaps or opportunities that we should be focusing on as investors and entrepreneurs out there listening?
Well, I think anytime when anyone gets involved in anything new, you come with your expectations, right? So if you're coming from the financial markets, you're going into the NF space normally looking for return, looking for financial opportunity. If you're coming in and you're an artist, you're looking for an opportunity of expression, of sort of securitizing your talent in a way, in terms of some of the stuff that Noble was talking about in terms of sort of streamlining even your payment process. And I think for me, as I talked about a little bit before, not going through my full history, but for me, a lot of my reasons for sort of looking at alternative spaces was to figure out a lot of things in the world that are happening I'm just not very comfortable with. Whether or not it's climate change, or whether or not it's social justice, or whether or not it's access to capital in marginalized communities. And I look at any system which now no longer which at this particular moment does not have the stamp of the powers that be in terms of how things can be allocated, in terms of who has access to those assets or to that market. I look at that as an opportunity, at least on the onset, of creating a system that could be a better means of distributing wealth, of distributing opportunity, and of creating social fairness. So, I know that I'm forgetting the exact words, but Noel made a great point about a lot in the future, these NFTs are going to have to create additional value. And that could be an underlying asset. I know Fabio had mentioned for like the bottle of wine. And when you think about sort of traditionally how a market can be regulated, there has to be some means of attributing value in a systematic way. And that's very difficult when you think about, say, an artistic NFT, in which that value system basically in some ways actually a vote from society in terms of what actual value is, besides something that you can actually hand in and receive something for. And I think there could be a need for that tangible asset, but I think there also that tangible return, but there also could be a need for a social value, a social return. Whether or not that is being able to structure an NFT in a way that you can actually attribute the returns embedded inside NFT, attribute the returns to some social project, such as providing clean water in areas that don't have clean water, in terms of providing, assisting conservation efforts, where there's just, I don't really see limits in terms of, because there's no limit to what you can actually do with cash, right? I mean, you have to look at it from a normal standpoint, like in terms of anything that has value. There's no limit right now without a cash that's in the system of us being able to fix all these problems. It's just that the mindset and the paradigm within the current financial system does not necessarily reward people for actually doing that sort of philanthropy. And I think the people who are involved in this market, oftentimes, at least the people that I've got to meet some extremely interesting people, including the four gentlemen here, or five, sorry, I missed you, Kyle. All seem to have the sense of sort of, in a lot of cases, have a sense of more social responsibility, more need to sort of have a freedom of mindset about how assets are allocated. And I think that at least in scrapping old things, not necessarily scrapping old things, but figuring out in this paradigm, in which I think it's definitely more democratic, how you can actually shape the market to do things such as perhaps give more freedom of assets to women, whether or not you could even, not necessarily just like pure tokenization or NFT, like help the voting system, how like using blockchain, for example, to actually, instead of having these communities which are marginalized and their votes are, questioned as to whether or not they even cast them, What if you had an infallible system to one-on-one vote that could actually track the vote of an individual,
Right.
and there be no question of that person's attention with that that value that they have, right? And I think, you know, voices value, someone's voice is probably the most valuable thing that you actually have, your power of decision. And what if you could use this market to actually securitize that and make it infallible,
Right.
make it unquestionable, and
right. No, I think you're perfectly right. There's a ton of opportunity. Unfortunately, everyone, we're at time, but Alicia, your point is spot on. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to give a quick shout out where you can be found. So, Alicia, where can everyone find you and your company online to continue the conversation? Again, thank you for the great point as well. Oh, Alicia, maybe there's a delay on my side. Where can everyone find you and your company online to continue the conversation?
We might have lost Alicia.
We might have lost Alicia, so apologies. We'll come back to her last. Adrian, where can everyone find you and your team online?
I can be found on LinkedIn. That one is my main communication hub. And of course, with my name, Adrian Niculescu, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, even on TikTok.
Thank you, Adrian. Fabio, how about yourself? Where can everyone find you and your team online to continue the conversation?
Definitely on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, on WeChat, on Instagram.
Shouting out at all, everybody. If you can't find Fabio, we got bigger problems.
I'm sure I'm another dozen of social media, so you won't have any difficulty finding me. Or if you want to look at the website of Golden Eagle, which is my investment bank, it's geca-us.com. But if you do, if you want to send me a quick message, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn are the easiest way.
Thank you, Fabio. Max, where can everyone find you online?
LinkedIn's really good. On Twitter, I am at Perica Per Icarus, Pericarus.
Look up Max Song on look up Max Song on LinkedIn. If you can't find him, guaranteed him and I are connected. That's the one Max Song you want to connect with. So there you go. Noble, you're welcome. Noble, to you. Where can everyone find you online?
It's easy to find me, Noble Drakoin, on LinkedIn. You can also find me at whereplaygames.com. And, of course, you can find me on VCTV, hanging out with Kyle at least a few times a month.
There you go. Thank you. Alicia, coming back to you, where can everyone find you and your company online to continue the conversation?
Yeah, I think I went I'm stale. I was moving, but I didn't see myself moving on the screen. LinkedIn is probably the most efficient way of looking for me. Twitter, I think I'm trailing Scribe. I'm a journalist wife. So, you know, all of those methods are great.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts and insights today around the future of tokenization. We'll be bringing each and every one of you back to continue this conversation along with many others of the VCTV family. Everyone out there, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all the hellos and all of the good notes. Appreciate all of you tuning in. Make sure to tune in just a few more minutes as we bring more investors from the VCTV family to break down some further topics around what's happening in the world today in innovation. Also, if you'd like to be on a show like today, either as an investor or as an entrepreneur, reach out to the team and or myself. We'll find that right spot for you. A big thank you to the Token team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. You can find me along with all of our guests today on LinkedIn, along with many other social networks as well. Check me out at Kyle Ellicott and check us out at latoken.com. We'll see you back here with more VCTV in just a moment. Have a great day, everybody.